Okay, and away we go. Hello, and good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening to you out there, and welcome to another Spider Strategies educational webinar. Today, our topic is Ask the Experts, with answers to common user questions in QuickScore and Scoreboard. My name is Tom Keating. I'm a customer success advocate here at Spider Strategies. Those of you who have attended webinars in the past know me and know my voice at least. I'll also be joined today by my colleague Frank Ziemba, who also has hosted several of these webinars. Frank is a senior consultant and training manager here at Spider Strategies. We look forward to working with you here today. A couple of the usual webinar logistic points. This webinar is being recorded for future use and reference. All of you live attendees are currently muted. Apologies for that, but we got to keep it quiet in the background. And along the way and or afterwards, if you have any questions or want to communicate with us at all about anything you see today or really anything about education around QuickScore or Scoreboard, please feel free to reach out to us at learn@spiderstrategies.com. Today's agenda. We like to give you, at least I like to provide like a list of what we're going to be covering. Today, I'm not going to list them for you. It's just really quite simple, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you and genuinely fun for us. We're going to be answering questions that you folks provided. And I do want to pause and thank you to all of you who did provide questions for us to consider. Just so you know, what we did is we collected all of the questions that came in. We tried to kind of categorize them because there were a fair amount that were quite similar in nature, some common themes or topics. We also asked our help desk if they had any ideas about, the questions that they hear frequently and what we should maybe cover to just hopefully answer frequent questions that come across their radar. We are going to be doing all the demonstration today in QuickScore, but for those of you that are Scoreboard customers, everything you're going to see today is exactly the same in Scoreboard in terms of the functionality, location, performance, everything. And again, per usual, we'll be using the Mythical Mobile World Inc. company and the environment or the platform provided there, as we usually use for demonstration and training purposes. Okay, so with that said, let's get to our first question. I want to better understand the normalized scoring, particularly the score result of an actual number against the target in the goal and red flag scoring type. Before we jump into this, folks, I got to say this was by far the most common topic that came up, was just curiosity or ignorance or just misunderstanding about scoring. So my job here over the next several minutes is to try to explain it all to you and have it make sense. This will probably be the longest topic that we're going to address here today, so bear with me. I'm going to start by jumping into QuickScore so that we can hopefully just reflect on the way I at least interpreted that question. I'm looking at a measure here on the left called goal and red flag. And what you see over on the right, of course, is the performance for, in this case, the month of April 2020 of 933. And you see along towards the bottom that the goal for this measure is 800. The red flag threshold is 500. And the way the question usually comes across is, wait a minute, I exceeded the goal. Why do I not get a 10? So a lot of times new users expect that exceeding a goal will equate immediately to a normalized score of 10. Similarly, if we look at another measure back here, if I go first of all, if we're in a month where we kind of did middling performance, this is usually very intuitive. People understand that if it's between 500 and 800, of course it'll be yellow. Of course it'll get a middle type 0 to 10 score. But then again, if we dip to a month where we're below our red threshold or intervention value, again, oftentimes new customers expect that this should get a normalized score of 0, not the 1.7 that is reflected here. So from here, I need to explain what the heck is going on behind the scenes on this scoring. So to do that, I've got a little presentation deck here. I'll go ahead and make it full screen. And this will start, presuming that either you folks out there live or people that might watch this later might be pretty new to QuickScore and Scoreboard. So I am going to kind of lead with introduction, and then we'll get into some of the details about scoring on the goal and red flag style first, and also 3-color. So it's very important that everyone understand that measures and their 0 to 10 normalized scores that are provided by the scoring type and the thresholds you define are the foundation. You know, those of you who have worked with me, I always call measures the foundation or the bricks of how performance, you know, is managed, tracked, and visually presented in QuickScore. The next most common question we face once people understand that we do that is why? And the answer is so that you can evaluate your business performance across lots of different types of measures. And to do that, you need to bring them all onto a kind of a common playing field so that you can equitably compare things that you might think of as apples against oranges, against bananas. And keeping that either good or bad analogy alive, let's continue to explain why the normalized scoring has really a lot of value for your overall performance management understanding. So at Mobile World, they have sales revenue, they have customer churn, they have profit percentage as measures that they track and they score. But as you can see here, the scales, if you will, are completely different. In sales revenue, they're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of sales per month. In customer churn, you know, they're losing customers in the, you know, the single digits or the tens. In profit percentage, they're talking about typically a relatively small, you know, percentage number. So the question here is, if we know all that actual performance information, that's great in the different departments, but how are we performing as an overall multi-divisional enterprise? And that's where we need, again, the idea of these normalized scores, bringing those actual performance values onto a common playing field or a common scale. So the sales revenue, that $550K was kind of, it's all right, it got a normalized score of 6. Customer churn, losing 80 customers is really bad, so it got a normalized score of 2. Profit percentage is exceptional at 33%, so it got a normalized score of 8. And what happens is all of these normalized scores come together to give us an overall view or understanding of how we're doing across the entire enterprise in these 3 different departments of 5.33. And then you may say, well, how did that happen? And it's really straightforward math, folks. In this case, we are weighting each of those different divisions or departments and their normalized scores equally. So we're simply taking an average of them. 6 plus 2 plus 8, divide that by 3, there's your 5.33. One minor point I do want to make is that you can adjust the weighting on these normalized scores. We could make sales revenue twice as important as customer churn or profit percentage if you want to within a scorecard. We're not going to get into those details today. So the scoring types that we provide you in both QuickScore and Scoreboard, there are 11 of them. We certainly don't have time today to get into all of these 11. I will say that Frank has created a wonderful scoring education video that's up on our Learn page, and you can get in and see all of these there. Today we're going to be focusing on the goal, red flag, and the 3-color, but you've got a lot of choices in terms of how you set up your 0 to 10 normalized scoring spectrum. So setting up a scoring for a measure in QuickScore. First of all, of course, you create the measure, you give it a name, you give it a data type, you give it things like how often is it updated. And when it comes time to define scoring, you have to know about the expected performance. You know about, let's say, sales revenue. You know what's bad, you know what's really good, and you know what's kind of medium performance. And what you're basically going to do by setting up your scoring appropriately is you're going to teach QuickScore or Scoreboard how to scale, grade those on that 0 to 10 normalized spectrum. Okay? So sales revenue, obviously, small numbers are bad, and it will equate, in the worst case, 100,000 of sales in a month gets a score of 0. 750K in a month gets a score of 10, somewhere in the middle. Could be a 5, could be 6, 7, what have you. So that's sales revenue's kind of paradigm. Customer churn is kind of flipping that on its head, where for customer churn, you don't want to lose customers. So on the left, losing 0 customers is wonderful, yay, and you get a normalized score of 10. If you lose 80 customers, that's awful, and it gets a normalized score of 0. And then there's another paradigm that I really like. It's kind of a warehouse inventory kind of story, where what you're trying to do is keep the perfect number, let's say, of widgets on your warehouse shelf so that you can fulfill orders, but you're not overburdened by taking up too much space in your warehouse. So you don't want to never go near 200 and never go near 600. Keep it in the middle so that you're always ready to fulfill orders, but not overwhelmed with your merchandise. Okay? Now, with both goal/red flag scoring and 3-color scoring, you're taking your 0 to 10 and you're dividing it up into 3 sections: red, yellow, green. Classic traffic light score or coloring. Everybody inherently understands red is bad, or it means stop. Yellow is okay. Green is good. Okay, and you'll note that the normalized scores of 3.33 and 6.67 are always applied in the normalized scoring to the thresholds that you define for the goal level and for the red flag level. And again, I just said that in words, and here's just a picture of it. So red flag always associated with 3.33 normalized, goal always associated with 6.67. And then you also need to have a worst that is associated with 0 and a best associated with 10. There's a couple different ways that those worst and best get defined, and that's where we're going to go next. So let's imagine a measure called units sold per month. And what you do to set this up with a scoring type is we're picking, in this case, goal red flag. You set a goal threshold. You set a red flag threshold. They, again, as I said, get immediately automatically associated with 3.33 and 6.67. Okay, and anything between them is, of course, going to be colored yellow. And the software immediately identifies that there's a 300-unit difference between 500 and 800. And what it does from there is it automatically defines the worst value at 200 by subtracting 300 from 500. And it automatically adds 300 to the 800 goal and gives you a best of 1100. And that happens, as I said, automatically. You don't have to do it. And the key takeaway for goal and red flag is those best and worst are automatically defined. You don't have to do it. And you also don't have control over it. Okay, you have to accept those as your worst and your best. Now, if we move to, how an actual value would get scored in that paradigm. So imagine for a given month we sold 1,000. Well, what's its score going to be? And you can see at the bottom it's 8.89. The question there is why? Why 8.89? Okay, so you see visually that 1,000 lands about 2/3 of the way, actually exactly 2/3 of the way across that 300-unit difference between goal and best. And you do 2/3 of that 3.33 space is 2.22. Add that to your 6.67 at the goal threshold, and you get your 8.89. Okay, hope that math makes sense. This is where if you were live, I would pause and say, does that make sense? And I hope it does. So now let's talk about setting up 3-color scoring. Same general red, yellow, green, but you set it up in a different way. So again, you define a goal. Again, you define a red flag threshold. They, again, are automatically associated with the 3.33 and the 6.67. But from there, that 300-point or unit difference is still there, but the software doesn't guess anything for you, makes no assumptions. So then you, as a user, have to define what is the worst, what should be 0 on your normalized scoring spectrum, and you get to define what's the best. So in this case, you can see it's not 200 for worst, it's 100 is actually worst, and the 1100 we saw in goal red flag, that's not good enough. If someone's going to get a 10, we better have sold 1,500. Okay, so the primary takeaway from this approach is that you define the worst and the best thresholds regardless of the difference between the red flag and the goal. So just to round this out, so what if we, again, say, well, for a given month, we sold 1,000 units. This gets a different score than the last time. This time, instead of 8.89 or whatever it was, it's now 7.62. Again, the question here, why? This time, 1,000 lands only 2/7 of the 700-unit difference between the goal and the user-defined best, right? And 2/7 of that 3.3 normalized score difference is only 0.95. So this time you're only adding 0.95 to 6.67 to get your 7.62. Again, I hope that makes a lot of sense because that's the end of my quick attempt to show you about normalized scoring in QuickScore and Scoreboard. Now, just to go back to QuickScore here, to just reflect on and make sure you're clear on where those thresholds are set. I don't want to just make assumptions that now that you know theoretically or conceptually about it, let's make sure you're clear on where and how you do that. So I'll just pick on this goal and red flag measure that we already were looking at earlier. Let me just adjust my resolution and make it a little bit bigger. Now that's too big. And I'm going to go into edit mode on goal and red flag. So at the bottom of the black and the lower right corner of the black, I'll go into edit mode on goal and red flag. We've got all of our attributes, all of our properties for this measure, of course, from the scoring type drop down. So here, folks, is where you have your 11 different scoring types. You simply click on the one you want. It will be indicated with a little check. So this one is goal and red flag. As a goal and red flag a measure and scoring type, I only have to define the red flag and the goal, and that's it. I don't have to tell it what's worst. I don't have to tell it what's best, because as you just learned, the software will do that for me. If we take a look at our 3-color measure here, again, same general idea, but notice, of course, the scoring type is 3-color. And this time in the series area, I have the opportunity or requirement to define a worst value and a red flag, and of course a goal, and then also a best. Okay, so the idea here is that you, under different scoring types, you're going to have different requirements and opportunities to provide different types of thresholds. So we could just, I don't want to belabor this too long, but if I go and look at just some of these other measures, if we look at goal-only type of measure, you see that the only thing you have to do, the only threshold you're providing is what's the goal. And then this will be scored as either red, you didn't get it, or green, you surpassed it. Yes, no is very similar. So these goal only, yes, no, 2-color, these are very kind of binary in nature, okay? But again, there is, in the sense of 2-color, there's a worst, a goal, and a best. So this is kind of analogous to that 3-color scoring versus the goal and red flag, okay? And then just before we move on, just the 4-color middle, I just want to give you the sense, where's the 3-color stabilized. This one right here is that warehouse example, and this, of course, requires a lot of different threshold values so that it can understand how to divide up, again, that 0 to 10 normalized score spectrum. Okay, so that takes care of that topic, or that question. And again, I hope this is hard to do without a live audience, but I really hope that answered that question for whoever asked it. Okay, next question of the day. Is it possible to have notes automatically displayed on dashboards? And the hard and really quick and happy answer to that is, heck yes. Yes, you can display notes on dashboards. So I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to jump over to the dashboards section of QuickScore, and I'm going to open up our good friend, the Mobile World Inc., and the dashboards therein. And I've got a couple dashboards here for today's webinar. So again, my happy answer to can notes be displayed automatically on dashboards is yes. This, for those of you who may have attended our dashboard webinar, we did cover this very briefly, but I'll just recover it here. So under the strategic communication dashboard, you see, of course, out here on the right, you see the opportunity to view a lot of different notes that have been provided underneath. You'll notice at the top, this is for the entire Mobile World Balanced Scorecard. So I'm able to view, without even having to click on them, I can view all the notes, and I can edit them, I can respond or reply to them if I like, and so on. So you've got, this is very live. I could add a reply right here, right now, and just say reply here. Oops, can't spell, here, okay? And then add a reply. So these notes, again, are live on this dashboard, and they can be presented in a variety of ways. Before I move on to showing you how to put notes onto a dashboard, let me just give you a sense of the edit control that you have over them. So I'll click on the edit button towards the bottom right of the left-hand navigation pane. And in here, I'll just click on this notes widget and show you just some of the properties of this notes widget. You can pick and choose what it is you want to show on that widget. You can display it as either a full notes as it's being presented right now, or an abbreviated tiles. So if I change that to abbreviated tiles, it takes up a little less space, giving you, you could then readjust the size or the width of this widget on the dashboard, so you're not taking up so much space to view those notes. You can adjust the background color. You can make it a solid background color to make it stand out a little bit against the light gray background color of the dashboard itself, and so forth. So I won't go into all the different properties here, but I do want to just change it back to display as and full notes, and then we'll move along to show you how easy it is to put notes onto a dashboard. So I've got right here a blank dashboard, and I'll again go into edit. I did previously add just a little text widget down here, so I can just drag this down and just get it out of the way. And then to make things hopefully easier to see, I'll go into full screen mode. So if I want to add notes onto a blank dashboard canvas, I simply go to the upper left, click Add Widget, and go to Notes. And then the question is, where should the note be found, either from a scorecard item or from an initiative? I'll go to the scorecard item, I'll go to Financial, I'll go to Increase Revenue, and I believe I've got a note out there for the measure of product revenue. So I'll click Add, and then I'll click Away. And sure enough, there's a note, okay? It's just like the one I showed you on the other dashboard. When notes are first added, they do come in, they come to life, if you will, in the abbreviated tiles mode. But again, as I showed you, you can just say, change it back over to full notes immediately, no problem there. Okay, and that again is a note that is pointing at one single measure. I just want to show you how easy it is to add a note that will show many notes under a given area of the scorecard. So like I showed you on the previous dashboard, I could add another note. It can be to a scorecard item. And in this case, I'm going to go after the whole Mobile World Balance scorecard. And my goal is to get all the notes from all the perspectives, all the objectives, all the measures that live in here. I'd like to see all the notes in one dashboard widget, compiled into one dashboard widget. Okay, so there I have that widget. And again, I can expand its size. And again, I can adjust how it's presented. I kind of like the full notes view, assuming you've got enough real estate to do that. And then from there, I just want to be real clear on how it's showing what it's showing. So I could go up here and again, go to the edit and say showing. And down here at the very bottom of the list of things that you can pick to turn on and off, like I could turn off authors, I could turn off replies, I could turn off the dates. So you can pick and choose what you show on the note. But an important little property is notes from Descendants. So right now, this is showing all the notes from all the elements under the entire Mobile World Balance scorecard. If I only want to see notes that are in and are attached just to the Mobile World Balance scorecard itself, if I do that, whoops, there are none. Nobody has provided any notes to the Mobile World Balance scorecard, okay? And I'm going to leave it like that intentionally here for just a minute because I want to show you that this dashboard widget remains very live, right? So right now, there aren't any notes that are applied to the Mobile World dashboard widget, scorecard itself. But if I go here to the scorecards, go to Mobile World Balance scorecard, go down to the show notes area down here at the bottom and say add a note and say, I'm just going to say this is a global note for mobile world. Okay, and I want to make this a all-time note. I want any month, any quarter, any year someone is looking at the mobile world as an element, I want them to be able to see this note. So I'll click add note. So that now exists, of course, as a note on mobile world. And then if we go back to dashboards and go to the dashboard that I just created, the dashboard to show notes. So there immediately live on that dashboard is the note that I just created 2 seconds ago, and it indicates it was created, just now. Okay. All right. So I think that should hopefully cover the idea of can notes be automatically added to dashboards? Okay. Next question. Next up. Can we please explain the aggregation type attribute of a measure or a KPI? And yes, I can. So for this one, what we'll do is go back here into scorecards area. And again, under mobile world, I've got a little organization for today's webinar called Aggregation Types. So folks, here's the overview. I have created 4 different instances of a revenue measure. So I've got revenue sum, revenue average, revenue geometric mean, and revenue last value already aggregated. Those are the 4 different aggregation types that you are allowed to set on a measure within QuickScore or Scoreboard. Now, one thing you might be noticing as I'm flipping through these different measures is, gosh, they look the same, right? Because fundamentally, they really are the same. They've got the same goal and red flag. They are the same properties. They're largely the same except for that one property of attribute or aggregation type, okay? And when I'm looking at it at a monthly level, so if I'm looking at it here for October of 2019 up to the upper right under the calendar period selector, I'm looking at this as at a monthly level. So these measures were all set up with a monthly periodicity, and I'll show you that here by going to edit in just a second. But my point here is that all of these, although they have different aggregation types, boy, they look the same, right? Visually, they're exactly the same when you're looking at it in the scorecard area, okay? So what I'm going to do is show you the nature of what I've done here by clicking edit. The bottom of, again, the black navigation pane will go into this revenue sum. And again, I just want to note with you that this calendar, this is kind of important. Each and every one of these measures was set up with a calendar of monthly. And that's where, when you're viewing them, they're identical at the monthly level. But the aggregation type comes into play when you change your calendar period by which you're viewing the measures. That's the key. So here in the aggregation type dropdown, that's where you get to pick the aggregation types that you want to apply to any particular measure. And you, as you can imagine, for these different ones, I picked a different one in each case. But besides that, these measures are all the same red flag, same goal, same everything. So with that in hand or known, let's go back out to the scorecard view of it, okay? And we'll take a look at revenue sum. Now here, if I change in the upper right the calendar periodicity away from monthly and say, you know what, let's start viewing this measure at a quarterly level, not month by month, but quarter by quarter. And we'll just go ahead and accept here that it's choosing quarter 4. I could change that, doesn't matter. And I'll click show results, okay? So it's showing me the revenue as it's being summed for, in this case, 3 months, okay? So notice that the value here for revenue for the quarter 4 is $1,650. Well, why? Where is that coming from? All it's doing, folks, is it's aggregating, it's summing, not just aggregating, it's summing 500, I'm down here towards the bottom, 550, and 600. It's doing what that aggregation type says it's going to do. It's summing them up and giving me a quarter total of 1,650, right? And it also, by the way, is summing, you notice here, the red flag and goal thresholds, okay? So it's also doing that, which is cool. All right, so if I move over to average, and again, still looking at quarter 4, notice here that now the value, the actual value is 550. Well, that's quite a bit lower than 1,650. Well, why? And again, the obvious answer is it's not adding 500, 550, and 650. It's averaging them, okay, which of course is 550. If we go to the geometric mean, and this, I'm not a mathematician, but geometric mean, as it was explained to me, is darn close to averaging, except that the outliers, the like statistical or mathematical outliers that can tend to skew averages, that they are disregarded. They're like thrown out. So that, to my understanding, is what geometric mean does. I'm not a mathematician. So in this case, notice that the value here is, it's $2 different. It's actually $1.52 different than what revenue was. Revenue was $550. Geometric mean is slightly different, but in this case, there aren't a lot of outliers to be thrown out. So, and again, we'll say, quote unquote, it's averaging with the geometric mean approach, again, 500, 550, and 600, okay? And then last but not least is the last value already aggregated. And the idea here is that when someone provided an actual value for the month of December, that was a total that had already been compiled for the previous, let's say, 2 or 3 months, or maybe for the whole year, or whatever it was. But in either case, it is reflecting a value of 600, because again, down here at the bottom, it's ignoring the 500, it's ignoring the 550, and it's just saying, I just want the last value that was provided for this particular time period. So if I jump back to quarter 3 in the upper right, while we're looking at last value already aggregated, and I go look at quarter 3 of 2019, what are we going to get? Okay, well, it's not 600, it's 450, of course, because again, in this case, for September, which is the last value, it's showing me 450. So I'm hoping this makes sense to everybody. And I just want to reiterate that if that only comes into play, this whole aggregation type comes into play as you adjust the periodicity by which you view measures that are set up, again, let's say at a low level of monthly. And again, just not to beat the dead horse, but if I change my periodicity to yearly, it's basically going to, as you can imagine, it's going to do the same thing. So notice, the graph on the right isn't going to show us a whole lot, but it is reflecting a value of 3,900, okay, for the year of 2019, okay? And so what it's doing is it's totaling up all the months, actual values for all 12 months of the year, okay? 3,900. Again, for revenue average, of course, what it's doing is it's averaging all 12 months actual values from 50 on the low end up to 600 on the high end. The average of that is 325. The geometric mean, it's fairly significantly different in this case, right? Average, this is where the geometric mean and the average differ. So average was 325, geometric mean is 264. So it's doing something in terms of probably throwing out the 50 and maybe throwing out the 600, which is significant, and then doing whatever its geometric mean math is. So that's pretty cool. And then again, the revenue last value is it's just going to reflect what was provided for December, for the whole year. The whole idea was if someone's putting in a number for December, it better already add up January through December, or it's not going to be probably accurate here within the scorecard. Okay, that's that. Again, I hope that answered the question. All right, next question. I would like information on security and data protection in place for SpiderStrategy's hosted implementations of QuickScore or Scoreboard. Okay, this is a question that we for sure don't have the time for me to go deep into this and, to explain everything that I might be able to share with you. So instead, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball, but hopefully it's a helpful curveball to you. We have a document. It's a PDF document called SpiderStrategy's Hosted Solutions, information about data centers, security, and support services. This is a 13-page PDF document. It's readily available at your fingertips. Okay, I'm showing it to you here. I'm not going to scroll through the whole thing, but you get a sense of the information that's in here just by looking at the table of contents. The thing that I do want to share with you is how you can easily get to this information. So I'm just going to go back to my browser, and I'm going to go to one of our very helpful home pages. I'm going to pick QuickScore in this case at balancedscorecards.com. Okay, any page through balancedscorecards.com. Let's imagine you're one of the people that loves our training videos, so you're at the Learn page, and you're looking at all these different training videos, and you're finding the different categories about creating scorecards. And look at that, there's even a training video, as I alluded to, about scoring in colors. So if I didn't do it right, you can go watch what Frank did. And then if I scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, way at the bottom in the black, under support, there is a choice of knowledge base. This is a resource that I don't think enough of our customers know about. So I'm going to click on knowledge base. And in here, it doesn't overwhelm you, but there's a lot of information. We have information on using Scoreboard, using QuickScore, release guides if you're curious about the difference between the previous version and the new version, what have you. And important to this question at hand about that security document is the tech and security. So I'm going to click tech and security, and there are several choices out here, okay? The one that we're driving after here is under Spider Hosted Facilities. There's a link to the document that I just showed you. You click on the link, and I'm not going to do it here, but you click on the PDF, download or open the PDF, and there it is for you. So that's how easy it is to get that type of information. And I just think it's helpful. I kind of milk that question for the opportunity to either show you or remind you about this very helpful resource called our knowledge base that, again, is available if I was showing you KPI Dashboard's homepage, it's in the same place. It's at the bottom in the black. Okay? So hopefully that provides you enough information to that question. This question is an interesting one. It's kind of specific probably to, I'm guessing this came from one of our international customers or partners, asking about the correct format to write decimal numbers when updating actual values? Should you use a period or a comma? And the hard and fast answer to that is depends. It depends on where, I guess, not so much where you are, but what language you are using in your browser. So in my case, of course, here sitting talking to you here from the United States, I've been using English as my Chrome browser language. So it expects me to put things in English formats, in the numeric format of using commas as like 1,000 separator and a period as the decimal. But if you are working in a browser that has a different language set, by let's say France French, you could provide your information in differently. So let me show you a super quick example of this, and then I'll move on and hand this. I think I'll be handing over to Frank here in just a minute. But in scorecards, if I were to go to just some random human resources and go in here, and I'll just randomly pick a measure. So down here, if I wanted to update, I'm going to change the periodicity just to simplify this, folks. Keep it simple. I'm going to go here to December of 2019. If I wanted to update this measure of number of CVs received, I of course can click the update button. And I hope this is the nature of the question. If someone is asking, when I provide the actual number and I've got a decimal in there, so let's say I want it to be 12.85, right? I can, here in the US with my English browser language info, I can put 12.85 and click save. And sure enough, it reflects 12.85. If I did that over and I changed my language to French and put 12.85, it's going to treat it differently. It's going to treat that decimal as a comma. And the thing is, if I then tried to say, well, let's put that same number in with, kind of the French numeric formatting of, let's say my intention is to say, again, 12.85, but I'm doing it with a comma. If I put 12.85 in here with my browser at English and say save, it just simply moves the comma over to a place that makes, I guess, if you will, sense visually. It ignores the comma as what it was intended to be was a decimal, and it just shifts over the comma to where it thinks it can put it. And if I even simplify that a little more, just to kind of, again, beat this topic and then I'll move on, is let's say that I just do 1.85. So my intent, I'm trying to say 1.85, but I'm doing it with a comma over here in the US with my English browser setting, and I do that, it completely ignores the comma because it doesn't know where to put it. It says, I don't need it. I don't need a comma for 185. So again, the hard answer to that question, and I know it seems weird, but it depends. I can't tell you whether a comma is right or a period is right. It depends on your browser language. Okay, next and last question. Can we please address the functionality behind the dashboard sharing capabilities and options? So this wonderful new capability came out in our version 3.33, and Frank Ziemba is going to help answer this question. So bear with me, folks. I do need to change the presenter over to Mr. Frank Ziemba, and he's hopefully there live, and we'll take this and run with it.
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Frank. Yes,
Wonderful.
I can.
Great job on that. Now let me see if I can bring this home. Okay, so just to reiterate there, so that question there, I'm going to take it a little step further there. The question went on to say, in the system it says they don't have to be logged in and they don't need an account. However, it would be interesting to know what the recommended websites are to easily open a link. So that's the question in its entirety. And again, we're talking about dashboards and shared dashboards. Now, before answering that, I'd like to explain that where this shared dashboard option is found. And within the product, we have the ability to either share a strategy map for our QuickScore customers. There's an option, strategy maps on the left. If you are Scoreboard, unfortunately, you don't have that option. So one of the two is not available for you. So there is an option to share a strategy map. There is also, which is the main point of the question here, the ability to share a dashboard. So you'll notice on the left-hand side in my org structure, I've gone somewhere that has dashboards built up, and I've selected dashboards here. Now, within here, I could have selected any one of the 5 dashboards that I've got built up in my environment. I'm just going to take the top one there. So the next question is, great, you've got a dashboard, you're in the right spot, either strategy maps or dashboards. How do I now go ahead and share that out? And up in the top right, we've got this send to option. And you'll see that there's a laundry list of options out here, but the main point of this question is down at the very bottom, there's an option called Share Dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I'm just going to walk you through. I know I'm going to speak to this more than what the question's asking, but I just want to give you a feel for the functionality in its entirety here. Okay, so after selecting that, the next step is to select the period of time that I wish to show on a shared dashboard. Now, our default, as we see here, is to show the current period. And that's a really important thing to understand as far as what's going to come across. Now, if I were to leave it as current period, right now we're on May 28th. If I were to share this out and make it accessible via a website, if I left this as current period, people are going to be defaulting to May. And the question is, well, is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? And typically my recommendation is that it's a bad thing. Most of our customers do not load their, let's say, monthly data until the beginning of the new month. All right, so with that said, if we're on May 28th, you might only have data entered for 95% of your measures through April, okay? So you're gonna have to play this by ear as far as what makes sense. This could be different dashboard by dashboard. Okay, so what might make sense for key measure history here, meaning let me take data through the prior period, certainly could be something else on a different dashboard where it makes perfect sense to just leave it with the defaulting current period. Okay, so anyway, you've got to think through that dashboard by dashboard. Most of the time, as I mentioned, I will take this back one period earlier. All you need to do is go to a drop down here and select it. And that's as simple as this screen can be. There's some other options. I don't want to complicate this any further. I'm just going to leave that one change there. Okay, next, I do need to select Create Link, bottom right. And you'll see what's going to populate up here is 2 sections on the screen. There's a basically a share section with a full URL to this dashboard that I can make accessible. And down at the bottom is a more complicated side of this, which is an HTML kind of framework coding section that I can copy and do something with. Let me keep this simple for now by starting with just the top one here. So you'll notice here, if I can grab my mouse with the full URL there, which I've successfully done, what I can do here is I can do a right-click copy. I can also do a go-to option there. Let me just do the copy because I'm going to wind up doing this a second time in a different browser in a minute. But let me do the hard step here where I'm actually going to open up another browser and paste what I just copied over there. Okay, so what you're going to see here is something that's really cool. What has transpired is I'm getting that dashboard in a full screen kind of view of that. Tom showed you a little bit before of going into a full screen option when building a dashboard. This is now, well, the dashboard's already built, and now your users are getting this nice looking presentation of this in full screen. Now, a couple gotchas here. Up at the top right, you'll notice that, what am I looking at? April of 2020, okay? Now, do you see any option where I can toggle back and forth? And the answer right now is unfortunately not, okay? So within this particular view that we're looking at, just launching that link that came across when I did the shared dashboard, I am right now stuck with whatever period. So the step that I told you before, as far as making sure that you think through, do I want current period, do I want prior period? It's gonna matter, and this is where it matters, okay? Because right now as a user, or as a person that, let's just say, launched that link, I am stuck looking at May. And you might say, great, that's all I'm really cared about right now. I want to look at my performance in April, and let's scrutinize that together, okay? So if we take a look at this right now, we see, all right, we've got 4 different areas of performance that's being tracked. Quickly, my eyes are going to focus in on the one that's sitting in the red here, right? So if I take a look at this, I see, of the 4 things I'm concerned about, increased lead generation Thomas gave us a wonderful explanation of performance. Why am I less than 3.33? You can kind of dovetail back into what he was referring to before. Well, that must mean that the actual value is less than the red flag in that goal and red flag scenario. So we can kind of bring all this stuff together here. But in any case, right now, just jumping to what I need to cover is, all right, we've identified this is the area of concern. Now, what I can do with this now is, so I've successfully launched the link. It's taking me to this point. I didn't have to put in any credentials, believe it or not. Anybody, and I'm going to show you this to prove this out, once you've given them that URL, could have launched this link within QuickScore or Scoreboard and got taken to this presentation. This is where now it's going to get tricky. All right, so now we've looked this over as a user. We say, all right, let me figure out what's going on with increased lead generation here. I'm going to go ahead and click that and notice what's happening. So right now where we're at is I'm already logged in as a user, and that was a user Frank. I'm a power user, but the key point here is that I've got a user credential within the system. And because of that, when I launched that link here, it took me directly to that location in the scorecard tree. Okay, so within here, let's just finish this thought off here. So this is the point that was sitting in red, increased lead generation. What's great with this now is we can get down to that lower piece of information. So if you're familiar with that terminology here, we're working with objectives because it's got that circle. Well, what's happening at the measure level? And this is where we can see, okay, we've got 5 different measures that comprise this objective. 3 of those 5 were sitting in the red. If we were weighting everything perfectly equally, work out the math, because 3 of the 5 are red, the objective is now sitting in the red as well, okay? So really nice functionality there if you're already logged in and you have a user account. Now, what I'm gonna walk you through is, let's take you through the side of the house where maybe I'm not logged in already into the system, or what happens if I don't have a user account. Okay, so let's take a look at that. What I'm going to do is right now I'm working within Chrome. I'm going to switch over to Safari, and I've already got a Google session brought across here, and all I'm going to do is paste that same exact URL, which is why I did the copy before. And let me just pull this up a little bit bigger here so we can see this here in Safari. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. And within here now, what you'll notice is that, okay, I've successfully launched the link as I promised you before. I'm stuck with April, same exact behavior. Now what I'm gonna say is, all right, we've done our analysis, increased lead generation is our problem. I wanna drill into it. And right now, again, I'm in Safari. I have not logged in yet, all right? So I'm not going to take this any further from here, but I just want to just talk a couple points now. Is if I was a user, I would put in my valid user account and password. If I did not have a user account, I am now stuck. Okay, so this is where if you have licensing available within your company, maybe just somebody within the administrative side of things needs to create an account for you. If you don't have licensing and you say, hey, that would be really cool, Frank, to be able to go into, like you showed me before when you drilled in on Chrome, I want to be able to go down to this level and see that there was campaign emails sent, that was in red and so on. That's going to be something that you need to work out as far as a licensing situation with our sales team, okay? So anyway, just working through some various things there that are cool to see. Now, one last piece that I want to get into with this is working through the other side of the house here. So let me go back to this tab. All right, so I'm back in Chrome now. We're done with Safari and working through that example there if you didn't have a user account or if you hadn't logged in yet. So this piece here, really easy. Once you click Share Dashboard, you get the URL, send it off to somebody, they launch it, immediately works, great. That piece where you drill down, that's when it starts getting into access. Now, this bottom piece is cool as well. Excuse me, it's just a little more challenging. Now, let me grab some water, excuse me. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so this piece here, again, the same link, Share Dashboard, you've got 2 sections here. what do I do with this? Okay, so you'll notice there's this big complicated section, iframe source. If you haven't worked with HTML coding, this could be completely foreign to you, which is fine. But the good news is that it really isn't as bad as it might look there. Now, let me show you a couple things with this, is that I've already taken this snippet here and I put together my own little HTML framework here based on 3 frames here that I literally went out to the web and said, hey, give me a shell framework that I can download and maybe manipulate. And I'll give you a feel for what that looks like in a second, but I just want to give you a feel for how you can bring across dashboards from QuickScore or Scoreboard. And right now I've got 2. I've got one dashboard here. I've got a second dashboard here. And up at the top left, I just grabbed some widget that's available off the web. That's just giving me the current date and time. All right, so just give you a feel for just different things that you can get into with this. Now, a little bit more as far as what's happening here. So I'm not going to show you this dashboard, but basically I have a second dashboard that's just showing me 4 perspectives and how they're performing as far as color remember that whole current period versus prior period discussion. Again, extremely important for this dashboard, just as it was on the one that we looked at prior, okay? So in building this one up, when I sheared off this dashboard, I told it to default to the prior period, just as I had done with key measure history. Now, when I did that and launched this, well, great, I'm getting the performance for the prior month. The other part with this now, if we're looking at this larger section here, this is the main one that we were looking at before. It's just captured within a HTML framework. Okay, so the good news is you can get to something like this. There's a lot of people out there that are more proficient with building up an HTML framework. You might have something that already in place where you can just send it off to an IT person and they say, oh great, I just need a couple bits of this code. Now, let me show you that, and I'll close with this, is that if I go back to here, this is our piece that is the key part of this now. And I'm just gonna open up a HTML page that I've already got sitting out here, so I'm not fumbling around within my text editor here. And this is what it looks like. You'll notice that it's relatively simplistic. Again, I downloaded most of this content as far as the setup of it with the tags and all this from somewhere off the web, and I did this a few months back. But the key parts that I then tweaked was this is the part with the clock, and I picked a certain time zone. I'm out in the central time zone here, and that's why I've got a section pulling from Chicago here, which happens to map up to the same time zone that I'm in. Now, the other piece to this is the piece that's coming across with that perspective part of the frame, the bottom left in my example. And what I want to focus in on now is this piece right here, okay? So this code that I've got highlighted here with HTTPS and the double quotes and all that stuff, this is exactly the same as this, okay? So I went here, I grabbed this part starting at the double quote and copied the rest of it. You'll notice that I actually dropped this piece that says iframe source. And if I were to go back to that prior location there, which I have now lost, let me minimize this. There we go. And you'll notice that the code is just a little bit different. With the HTML framework that I downloaded had a piece called frame source. The other one was called iframe. I just kept whatever I was looking for here, and I did append on basically a greater than symbol at the end to close that off. But in any case, just a simple example of how you can leverage this cryptic code that you see here in the tool. Okay, so I'm about out of my time, but there's one more piece that I want to show you here is that, so I went into the Send To, I clicked Share Dashboard, it pulled up the screen. What if you hit close? Once you hit close, you could be done as far as, well, how did you get this code? I lost it. Oh my goodness, I don't know where you found that. How do I get back to it? And a couple things here from an administration side of it, and I'll take you this just by clicking on this link to start here, is that if you do have the screen currently up, there is an option called, with this link, Share Dashboards and Strategy Maps. You'll notice that if you click it, it's going to take me into this administration location. And I'm just going to go ahead and launch that and show you that, yep, fair enough, I've got the Shared Dashboards and Strategy Maps section. This is part of the settings world, which we've covered in prior webinar sessions, so keep an eye out for that. But the main thing to look at here is that you'll notice that the two dashboards that I just showed you in that HTML framework, here's my by perspective. I've got something built for that or shared out for that. And I've got the key measure history, the main one that we've been talking about here. So within this world here, a couple things. I could delete this if I don't want this to be shared out any longer. There is an option to delete. I don't want to do that right now. I'm going to click on Send To, the other option that we see here, and I'm just going to pick on the main dashboard that we've been working with here. So this is the place where I can get back to this location if I wanted to. I could also go work my way back to the Send To option, Share Dashboard once I'm on the right dashboard. This is a lot quicker place to get to that. If I've got permissions within the screen, I might be secured out from certain regions. So some people might not have access to this location. Just want you to be aware of that fact as well. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a full picture. I missed one piece that I did want to touch on before I quickly turn things back over to Tom here. So the person that asked this question, we come all the way back, and when I started this, I actually read off the question. The part that they were referring to, that you don't have to be logged in and don't need an account, this is actually sitting within this screen that I just went to from the settings panel. Okay, so that's where they grabbed that question from. All right, with that, Tom, I'm gonna quickly turn things back over to you, and I'll just keep the screen access on my end, and I'll just put something prettier on screen here.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Good job. I appreciate it. So, folks, it's back to me. But to be perfectly honest, we've covered all the questions that number one, that we have time for, and I hope that it was all very helpful. I do just want to reiterate what I said earlier. If you have additional questions that maybe you never got around to sending to us, we're still here to help you answer your questions. Please reach out to us anytime via learn@spiderstrategies.com. We thank you very much for attending with us today, and for those of you who came to so many of our previous, I think it was like number 8 of the webinars that we've done this spring, for you guys during these kind of pandemic and troubling times. We figured the least we could do for our customers and our partners is offer you some free education that will hopefully be helpful to you. So we hope you've enjoyed them all. As we've told you multiple times, all these webinars have been recorded. They will be put together into a quote-unquote library, and those of you who have registered for these webinars will get access and a link and access to all of those recorded webinars. So mostly at this point, thank you for being a customer. Thank you for being a partner. We at Spider Strategies love and appreciate all of you. And that's it for today. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.